It was a Tuesday morning in late autumn, the kind of day when the sky wore a pale grey shroud and the air carried the faint, metallic tang of salt from the sea, even though the ocean was miles away. The Pacific Ocean Marine Sanctuary was not yet open to the public, but the staff had arrived early, as they always did, to begin the quiet rituals of maintenance and care. The concrete walkways glistened with dew and the occasional splash from the tanks, and the only sounds were the hum of filtration systems, the soft creak of metal gatos, and the distant cry of a seagull lost in thought. The air was cool, not cold, and carried the scent of damp earth, chlorine, and something deeper, something ancient, like stone worn by waves over centuries. Footsteps echoed in the cavernous space, slow and deliberate, belonging to Elena Morales, a marine biologist in her mid-30s who had just transferred from the Northern Research Station. She wore a navy blue jacket over a thermal shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, and her eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the perimeter of the main observation tank. This was her first day. The tank itself was massive, a curved wall of reinforced glass that stretched 30 feet high and 50 feet wide, filled with those million gallons of filtered seawater. Sunlight, diffused by the overcast sky, filtered through the surface in shifting patterns, illuminating ribbons of kelp and schools of silver minnows that darted like living shadows. At the center, suspended in the water like a dream carved from obsidian and moonlight, was Orla, female orca, 19 years old, captured as a calf off the coast of British Columbia and brought here 20 years prior. She was large, over 22 feet long, with a sleek black back, a white underside that flared like a bell, and a dorsal fin that curved backward like a question mark. She moved with a grace that belied her size, gliding through the water with barely a ripple, her pectoral fins brushing the edges of the tank as if testing its boundaries. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, rarely blinked, and when she surfaced, the exhale from her blue wall sent a plume of mist curling into the air, smelling of brine and deep water. Elena paused near the glass, her breath catching for a moment. She had seen orcas before in documentaries, in research journals, even in the wild ones, from a distance, but this was different. This was proximity. This was presence. Orla turned slowly, her body pivoting on a central axis, and began to swim directly toward the observation wall. Not fast, not playful, but deliberately slow. Each movement was measured, each stroke of her tail a whisper against the water. She passed the schools of minnows, which scattered like startled leaves. She glided beneath a floating platform where a technician cleaned sensors. And then, without hesitation, she came to the glass. Elena held still. Orla stopped, her body parallel to the wall, her head slightly tilted. Her eye large, dark, and unnervingly human locked onto Elena's. For a long moment, there was no sound but the hum of the pumps. Orla's breath came in steady bursts as her blue wall opening and closing with rhythmic precision. Elena could see the thin lines around her mouth, the slight scar above her left eye, the way the light caught the water droplets clinging to her skin, and then, Orla swam forward slowly, so slowly until her nose touched the glass. Elena didn't flinch. She didn't breathe. She felt it then, a vibration in her chest, a low thrumming that seemed to come from the water itself. Orla remained there, motionless, her eye fixed on Elena, as if studying her, as if memorizing the shape of her face, the color of her eyes, the way her breath hitched. And then, a child appeared. She was small, no older than 6, with wild curls the color of autumn leaves and a red coat buttoned up to her chin. Her name was Mira, and she had come with her father, a quiet man who worked as a janitor at the nearby hospital. They had saved 4 months to visit, and today was her birthday. Mira had seen whales on television, but never in person. She had drawn pictures of them, big, smiling creatures with rainbow tails, but this was nothing like that. This was real. This was heavy. She stepped forward, her small boots clicking on the wet concrete. Orla didn't move. Mira raised her hand, her fingers trembling, and pressed them against the glass, directly across from Orla's nose. Orla didn't flinch. She simply watched it, her eye unwavering. Mira's breath fogged the glass, and then, slowly, a tear escaped. It rolled down her cheek, tracing a path through the condensation, and dropped onto the floor. Orla tilted her head, as if sensing the shift in that child's energy. She exhaled again, and the mist curled around Mira's in like a ghost. Mira didn't cry aloud. She just stood there, tears falling, her hand on the glass, and Arla, the great Barca, remained before her, still, silent, slow. Elena turned away then, her own eyes burning. She walked to the control room, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She had seen something profound, a connection forged not through words or tricks, but through presence, through stillness, through the quiet understanding that two beings, separated by species, by language, by environment, could share a moment of recognition. Over the next few weeks, Elena settled into her role. She monitored Arla's health, studied her behavior, recorded her vocalizations. Arla, in turn, became a fixture in Elena's life. She watched her swim every morning, sometimes for hours. She noticed patterns. Arla preferred the northern end of the tank at dawn, often circled 3 times before surfacing, and sometimes sang low, humming sounds that vibrated through the walls. Elena learned to read her moods, the tension in her flanks when a storm approached, the playful flick of her tail when the sun broke through the clouds. One afternoon, a young dolphin named Kale was transferred to the sanctuary. He was energetic, curious, always darting around, clicking and whistling. He approached Arla with excitement, but Arla remained aloof. She swam in slow circles, ignoring his advances. Kale persisted, nudging her gently, but Arla turned away each time. Elena observed this for days, noting how Arla seemed to withdraw more, spending longer periods near the glass, as if seeking something beyond the tank. Kale eventually adapted, finding companionship with a group of sea lions, but Arla's solitude deepened. Time passed, seasons changed. Elena grew older, her hair grayed at the temples. Mira returned once a year, always on her birthday, always with her father. Each time, she would press her hand to the glass, and Arla would come. Sometimes Mira cried. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she just stood there, silent, watching. Elena began to notice small changes in Arla. Her movements were a little slower, her diet shorter, her skin duller. The sanctuary's veterinarians conducted regular checkups, but there was no illness, no injury. Just ash. Just steam. And then, one spring, Mira didn't come. Elena waited. Days turned into weeks. She asked the janitor, Mira's father, but he only shook his head, his eyes downcast. She moved, he said, far away. Her mother got a job. Elena nodded. She didn't press. She understood. Life moved on. But that night, as she stood by the glass, Arla did something unusual. She swam to the northern end, circled 3 times, and then came directly to Elena. She stopped, her meeting Elena's, and then she began to swim slowly in front of the glass, just as she had done that first day. Elena held her breath. Arla passed once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th pass, she paused, her nose touching the glass, and then she exhaled. A long, deep breath. Elena felt it in her bones, and then Mira returned. She was 15 now, tall and quiet, her curls tamed into a braid. She wore a black jacket and carried a sketchbook. She didn't speak when she saw Elena. She just walked to the glass and pressed her hand against it. Arla came. Elena watched as Mira closed her eyes, tears falling again. But this time, Mira smiled. She opened her sketchbook and showed Elena drawing Arla, swimming in the ocean, waves crashing behind her, the sun setting on the horizon. I've been drawing her, Mira whispered, every year, since I was 6. Elena nodded. She remembers you. Mira looked at her, surprised. How do you know? Because she came to the glass, Elena said. The way she did the first day, the way she did when you didn't come. She was waiting. Mira stared at Arla, who was now circling slowly, deliberately, in front of the glass. Again, and again, and again. Months passed. Elena began to prepare. The sanctuary's board had voted to retire Arla to an open ocean sanctuary in the North Pacific, a protected cove where she could swim freely, hunt real fish, hear the songs of wild pods. It was the right thing to do, but it was also the end. Elena spent hours with Arla, talking to her, singing to her, playing recordings of wild orca calls. She taught her to respond to new cues, to navigate currents, to hunt. Orla learned it quickly, too quickly. Elena began to feel the weight of separation. She would stand by the glass at night, long after the lights were dimmed, and Orla would come. Always, slowly, deliberately, in front of the glass. And then, the day came. The transport team arrived at dawn. Orla was sedated, gently lifted from the tank, and placed in a custom swing. Elena stood by, her hands clenched. As the crane lifted Orla into the transport truck, Elena whispered, "Go home." Orla didn't open her eyes. But as the truck pulled away, Elena saw something through the rear window. Orla's tail flickered once. A final gesture. The sanctuary was quieter after that. Kale and the sea lions remained, but the main tank felt empty. Elena continued her work, but her heart was elsewhere. She received updates Orla had adapted well, was swimming freely, had even been seen near a wild pod. But Elena never saw her again. Years passed. Elena retired. She moved to a small coastal town, built a house near the cliffs. She still walked the beach every morning, watching the waves, listening for the blow of a whale. She kept Mireille's drawing in a frame on her wall. And then, one autumn morning, just like that first Tuesday, the sky wore a pale gray shawl, and the air carried the scent of salt. Elena was sitting on her porch, drinking tea, when she saw a black fin breaking the surface, far out in the bay. She froze. She grabbed her binoculars. It was a nautica, a female, large, dorsal fin curved backward. She watched as the whale swam slowly parallel to the shore. Not fast, not playful. Deliberately slow. Elena held her breath. The whale passed the rocks, then the pier, then the lighthouse. And then, for just a moment, it turned. Its eye dark and intelligent met Elena's across the water. Elena didn't cry. She just smiled. And then the whale was gone. The waves returned to normal. The seagulls cried. Elena finished her tea. Some memories don't need to be defended. They only need to be remembered.